Welcome to another Pro Tips. Similar to the last one, we're still here with the guest, Carlo, talking more about the catalog and this time specifically more about software and the catalog, so software normalization. So let's jump into software normalization. I'm going to start by just going to the software tab that we have in Lansweeper Cloud, because software normalization, we've been working on software normalization for quite some time. I remember the first time that we basically had the cloud available for people in early access, whatnot. There was already a version of software normalization available. I remember back then we worked with an external party. But now we've switched, right?
Yeah, I would say that there were two main limitations that we were able to overcome. The first one was that we were trying to normalize software with the only purpose and angle of vulnerabilities. While in the end, you need to normalize in a generic way, and then you are able to attach more and more data points like the life cycle or the vulnerabilities or even just the taxonomy of the software. So the second point was the fact that after a thing was acquired, as a matter of fact, it was a technology acquisition, and we were acquired by Lansweeper mainly because of the CDR. But then the catalog was like a little jewel that we were working in our startup phase. And by joining forces with Lansweeper, we have been able to scale up. So to assign a dedicated team, which is now the catalog team, and to improve and add more and more data points to the catalog. So this means that our normalization engine, the approach and the technology, we've been able to adapt and reuse it almost 100% in order not only to normalize the operating system that were already there, but then also the software. Even if the software is a different beast, I would say, because the challenge with software naming and version is not trivial.
Yeah, indeed. So maybe before I jump into the software normalization as we have it right now, I can quite easily show a couple of examples. If I just look here for Chrome, something we send out very often is basically Chrome or just browser audits in general, just to make sure, to let people check, okay, is their browser on the latest version, yes or no? And that when I open these reports, and people can do the same thing in their Lansweeper installation, when you duplicate and open it, it's a bit of a mess because it's not as easy as just saying, okay, show me. Ideally, it would be something where here in this filter you say something like, okay, show me all the versions where Chrome is not on, not lower or equal than, I don't know, 114 in this case, or lower than 114. But because we don't have that version number really normalized yet in the report engine, at least, it's something that I cannot do yet. And this is where I can start scrolling through this, where we start splitting up the version numbers basically manually in the query, and I have to adjust these numbers every single time and create a new report for every single version basically that comes out, because it's a big part of people that, and I've seen this at events as well, and when I've met people that are our customers or that are just sysadmins in general, they say I need to know what those versions are, and I need to have those reports because it's part of our our compliance. We have to be on the latest version after X amount of days or something of days. So it's something that's important for them, but something that's creating this kind of report from scratch, especially if you're not used to using or querying in Mongo, for example, is something that would take you a long time. For me, it's more or less a template, so I can create these quite quickly. But if you were to have to do something like this for any other type of software, you basically have to more or less, you can start from this, but it's something that takes you, a day's work at the minimum, I think, to really figure out.
Yeah, definitely. Because even in this example, for example, very, very typically, you have the manufacturer. Maybe it could be Google. Sometimes it could be Google Inc. But then in the name of the software, you can have everything. Even the name of the manufacturer, part of the version. So this is exactly what the software normalization is doing for us.
Yep, and already in cloud, it already, and in report engine as well, it already does that to some degree, for the most part, with software names.
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of these will just already be Google Chrome. There are a few exceptions. For example, with Linux is still one where it's a bit trickier. There it's still Google Chrome stable, but even this part already is easier than, for example, the on-premise, because the on-premise I really have to be very specific with the naming that I put in there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it will add additional things. Google has their language packs and things like that that are available for Chrome that also have Chrome in the software title. So if you just say, okay, just give me every software with Chrome in the title, it will add those language
Yeah.
packs, and then your queries will start failing because you're trying to do things with the version number, and those language packs have different version numbers.
Of course.
So it's a whole mess. just to combine it into one sentence, it's a whole mess to try and do this if you do not have any kind of software normalization. So it's already great that we at least have the kind of the naming normalization in the reporting engine. If I go back here to the software, maybe just to pick an example for 7-zip, we also already do this outside of the reporting. Just in the product, we already do this for versioning as well. We already clean up the versioning. So I think, yeah, here you can see what the versioning kind of originally was.
Yeah.
7-zip seems to like to add kind of the architecture of
Yeah.
their version.
Very frequently you have variants in the version or even in the software name with the architecture, or even with sometimes with part of the build, sometimes with part of the release date. So really for software without normalization, it's a
I
mess.
think one of the funniest examples that I've seen in my years of creating these kind of reports is with Firefox. Um, Firefox has, and with the Firefox versions, Firefox has a lot of different ways their versions come out. Not only do they have, regular Firefox, they also have their ESR version of Firefox, which then we get more into the kind of editions, because software also often has different editions. This also comes back with, for example, operating systems. You also have the enterprise editions and things like that, which is, a whole separate conversation maybe. But with Firefox, you not only do you have the editions, you also have, the version can be one number, it can be two numbers, it can be three numbers. And then recently, or relatively recently, we started scanning Microsoft, kind of the Windows apps. So apps that you can download from the Windows Store. We started, from the Microsoft Store. We started scanning those. I discovered that in Microsoft Store they have four numbers. So it seems like wherever I approach or whenever I see Firefox or it comes onto a new platform, they seem to add another number to their versioning system,
Yeah.
which is just, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you're creating these kind of, these reports, especially the way that I create them, they have to match, they have to come in a format that I expect them to come in. And for example, when we first started scanning those Microsoft Store apps, we got customers that were saying like, "Look, the report fails, or it's not working." And that's how I quickly found out. Oh yeah, it's because they're starting to scan the Microsoft Store apps, and in the Microsoft Store it has 4 digits in the versioning number. The last digit is always a 0, so it's kind of useless. But
Okay, I see.
but it's just a matter that there's no standardization in any of the software when it comes to naming, when it comes to versioning, or even additions. So you need the normalization at all times, because there's just it's not like it's not like things where, for example, with the operating systems, you just have, well, okay, there's basically Microsoft owns the majority of the market. So it's almost like there is some sort of standardization. But with software, it's all over the place. So these kind of things are very, very valuable to have. Um, and great here as well. We get to see, okay, what the original data was, what the data is now, and also how many of those installations that we have, as well as what assets are those installed on, along with kind of the version number. And if there's multiple versions, we can see what the multiple versions are as well. So this is it's a really nice example of kind of what software normalization can already do. You mentioned as well, or I mentioned as well, additions. So that's kind of a whole separate thing.
Yeah, yeah, I would say, well, I agree 100% with your statements. And as a matter of fact, that we have two angles, because one angle is to be able to normalize the software according to the different versions, variants, and naming. But then also another very relevant angle that we have is to be able to provide a unique view on your software inventory, no matter if the same software title is installed on Windows or on a Mac or on a Linux, or is it installed with a standard installer, or it's from the MS Store. So that's another level of challenge that we want to fix with the software normalization, definitely. And as part of that, to answer to your question, yeah, in the software normalization that we've been working on, we are cleaning all the messy software title and versions. And in doing this, we are detecting the language, the market version, and the version, and then of course the full build, which is the one supposed to be with 4 digits, and also the architecture. So every one of these that I just mentioned, at some point will become, when we will graduate, we will make it available as separate field. Also because, for example, the market version, no, sorry, the edition, it's one of the most relevant points when you want to attach the lifecycle information.
Yep, because as you know, as most people as well will know, that Windows has its kind of and also other operating systems have their long-term service versions, LTS versions, that they often have that are supported for much longer. But in Windows specifically, you have kind of the basic ones, which are Home and Pro, which are kind of the shorter supported ones. But then you have Enterprise and Education, which are supported longer. If you're not able to make that distinction, then it's very difficult to also add the correct kind of lifecycle data to it. Exactly. Another thing, with the languages is another thing that I've run into a couple of times. With languages where, especially with Microsoft, even in combination with Edition, because you have the Enterprise edition of Windows. Well, if you install your Windows in the French language, it's entreprise. So it's it's like basically one letter different, or one letter is switched around. But it causes that if you create a query, in my case, when I created a query about it, people come back, some of our French customers come back and say, look, my report doesn't work. And you take a look at their, the example data that they show, and it's like, oh yes, okay, because of course Microsoft decided to, write that information in the native French language instead of just, writing it all in English. But yeah, those are problems that I often see coming back when creating kind of the on-premise reports as well, and that are basically an issue for people that want to create similar things in their own installations as well. Yeah. So another thing that is coming soon, to kind of this software page in general, is something that we already have in a couple of other pages, when it comes to kind of being able to sort through this better. Maybe you could talk a bit about that as well.
Yeah. So we will be able to leverage and surface more and more the normalized software information in the views and in the reports, and we will be attaching more and more data points. So, for example, we will be assigning. We have been in the catalog assigning taxonomy. So, what type of software and what category of software. And this is going to help a lot in with regard to reporting and dashboarding, and we will be adding even more data points in the near future.
And I think also, the thing that I mentioned in regards to something that's coming short term is similar to what we now have in already inventory. We already have it also in Security Insights. I think those are the places that it is in right now. Maybe I'm forgetting places, but that's related to our custom views and being able to
Exactly.
create custom views. That's coming to software soon as well. So you'll be able to basically create a custom view where we have the default fields that that were in the view, but will allow you to add additional views as well, or remove views if you don't want to see them. And I think a big part of that is also being able to filter and add advanced filters to that view, where you're able to say, okay, I only want to see, obviously these fields are not in this specific example because this is an inventory, but I want to be able to, for example, only see in my list of software that has this in the name, or where we have more than, let's say, I only want to see my list of software where we have more than 10 installations of.
Yeah.
All kinds of different ways that you're able to at least narrow down this software list in a way that helps you, or helps the customer get an overview that they really need.
Yeah.
It's a way also just to, for example, those the Chrome audit report that I just showed. In theory, you could create that report in a custom view once they're available, because it's as simple as saying, add a filter on Chrome, add a filter on the version number, and
Exactly.
you're pretty much there. So that will be something that people can look forward to already try out as soon as it's available, which should be soon. And might even be by the time that people are watching this. So if you're watching, you can go over to your cloud site and see if it's there. Hopefully it will be there, so you can already try it out. All right. I think we've talked about most of what there is around software normalization. I think one additional component that we've not mentioned yet, but I mean, it's very early on still for that as well. But similar to how last episode we talked about things like where we use credential-free device recognition to also provide that to hardware manufacturers to allow them to actually use that technology to provide better service to their customers. We're also thinking about doing a similar thing with software normalization, right?
Yes. Yes, definitely. As part of our embedded technologies initiatives, uh, every every new feature that we add on top of the normalization and catalog engine is built with an OEM ready mindset, so that we can make it available to third parties.
Yep. So that means basically any hardware manufacturer of network equipment could theoretically just use, Lansweeper technology to provide, basically, let's say, software normalization capabilities in their own products, in their own interfaces, things like that. And I mean, that's obviously very useful for them, but also useful for us, because in the end, a lot of the value comes from being able to use the machine crunching, as you said, to improve the accuracy of all of this. And obviously, the more devices, the more things that we have connected to it, the better it will become.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the concept.
All right, great. I think we've pretty much covered everything around software normalization and what's to come, very exciting things to come. I'm looking forward to it because it will make my life a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the people that are watching as well are excited for it, because it will make their lives easier as well in regards to being able to report on all of it. I think that's a critical component of it, is having that data and then being able to actually also manipulate it in a way so that it gets in a view that they want as well. Okay. Um, with that, Carlo, I want to thank you for coming, stopping by, because it's been quite a journey. You're not local.
Yeah.
So it's been a flight to get you over here, but I think it's been very interesting. Also for the people at home, very interesting to get kind of your, kind of get the information from the source in a way.
Yeah.
Someone who's really working on the catalog and is working in that team. So yeah, it's been great having you. So thank you.
It was a pleasure.
All right, then the only thing remaining is to say goodbye to the audience, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.